Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming today. I'm glad you could all be here for this. I think it's going to be a very interesting and dynamic discussion we're going to have on economic security and space cooperation. At the recent summit meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and newly inaugurated Korean President Yoon Yeol, the United States and the Republic of Korea agreed to cooperate on establishing a strategic economic and technology partnership. As part of this partnership, the United States and Korea are looking to deepen cooperation on economic security and space. KI is pleased today to work with our co-sponsor, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, and is grateful for their support helping to make today's program possible. We are also delighted to have senior officials from both governments today with us to provide keynote remarks and to help set the stage for our discussions. In the interest of time, I'd like to introduce both of our keynote speakers first up front. And our first keynote speaker will be Ambassador Sang-hwa. Ambassador Lee is the Deputy Minister for Public Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Prior to taking his current position, Ambassador Lee served as the South Korean ambassador to Myanmar from 2018 in January. Since joining MOFA in 1991, he served in multiple positions, including as the Director General for North Korea Nuclear Affairs, Policy Advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Chief of Situation Center and Deputy Director General for Policy Planning. Also, Ambassador Lee worked closely with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon at the United Nations as a member of the transition team for the 8th UN Secretary General Designate, and later serving as an assistant to Secretary General Ban in New York. We also have with us today senior U.S. official for APEC Matt Murray. He coordinates U.S. participation in APEC and oversees the Office of Economic Policy in the State Department's Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs. Previously, Mr. Murray led the State Department's Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs as the senior bureau official. He also served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Trade Policy and Negotiations. Mr. Murray has focused on U.S. economic engagement with the Asia-Pacific region throughout his State Department career, including as Minister Counselor of Economic Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, Counselor for Economic Affairs in the U.S. Embassy in Canberra, and Special Assistant for East Asian and Pacific Issues in the Office of the Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and Environment. One note before I turn things over to Ambassador Yi for his keynote remarks. While Ambassador Yi and Senior Official Murray's remarks are on the record, the rest of today's discussion will be off the record. With that, Ambassador Yi, the stage is yours.
Mr. Matt Murray, U.S. Senior Official for Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, distinguished guests, dear participants, good afternoon. I would like to offer my warmest welcome to you all. As you may know, yesterday marked 1 month of the ROK-US Summit since the inauguration of Yoon Yeol government, which was the earliest summit in a Korean president's term in office with a US president. Following the summit meeting, our two leaders issued a joint statement which laid a solid foundation for global comprehensive strategic alliance between our two countries. It covers critical issues like peace and stability in the region, economic security, and space cooperation, among others. Regarding economic security and the global supply chain, the two leaders committed to enhancing partnership on critical and emerging technologies through the promotion of investment and R&D cooperation. They agreed that secure, sustainable, and resilient global supply chains are fundamental to these efforts. They also agreed to establish a regular ministerial-level supply chain and commercial dialogue to discuss the promotion of resilient supply chains of key products, including semiconductors, batteries, and critical minerals. As Woody Allen noted, 80% of success in life is showing up. When it comes to diplomacy, 80% of the work is following up. The Korean government is moving swiftly to follow up on the meeting between President Yoon and President Biden. One notable follow-up measure is Foreign Minister Park Jin's visit to Washington, D.C. last week. It was a testament to our strong commitment for alliance in action. Before his trip, Minister Park opened the Center for Economic Security Diplomacy in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The opening of the center reflects our renewed recognition for the need to reshape our system towards secure and resilient supply chains of critical products and technologies. The recent shortage of semiconductors and its consequential massive disruption of automobile business is an alarming case in point. No wonder there is a joke in Washington that if President Biden were to change his bumper sticker, he would choose the one that says semiconductor is security. It is no coincidence that President Biden's first stop in Korea was the Samsung Electronics Pyeongtaek campus, which is the single largest semiconductor manufacturing facility in the world. There are other measures taken by Korea to reorganize domestic systems as a way to strengthen economic security. Just to name a few, Secretary for Economic Security was established in the presidential office to coordinate economic security-related agendas and establish strategies through collaboration with relevant ministries. From the legislative side, the Basic Act on Supply Chain Management for Economic Security will be enacted this year. Today's seminar is on another follow-up measure to ROK-US Summit. We will focus on economic security and global supply chain before moving on to space cooperation. We are very fortunate to be joined by the most reliable experts in these fields. Before we start the sessions, I would like to point a few things out so that we can address them collectively. First, the US and its partners should be able to come up with a comprehensive strategy to ensure reliable and resilient supply chains. For semiconductors, for instance, no country has complete end-to-end control of chip manufacturing. It is a hyper-specialized and complex industry that involves an intricate set of steps from design to front-end fabrication to back-end assembly, testing, and packaging. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is likely to throw yet another wrench in the global supply chain for chips, as both countries provide key inputs such as nickel, palladium, and neon. So the broader nature of the supply chain should be addressed using a short-term and mid- and long-term tool set. Second, from the business point of view, government's intervention and industrial policy to prop up critical technologies and to improve competitiveness is of utmost significance. However, policymakers often find themselves in a trade-off situation between economic and security interests. For instance, a ban on foreign products over security concerns may trigger an outcome which is detrimental to our own economy. Another example is nuclear and space technology with enormous potential for economic gains, but it can run the risk of proliferation and other misuse. Third, we have to figure out whether the current foreign investment screening and export control regime, such as Bolsonaro arrangements, is enough to prevent authoritarian regimes' pursuit of securing advanced technologies to undermine our national and economic security. Fourth, we have to be mindful of China's market power in semiconductors and asymmetric relations with China among key semiconductor manufacturers. The key question is how to keep engagement with China as the US strives to forge groups of like-minded countries, such as Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, in addressing our common agenda of resilient supply chain that may be unattainable without Beijing's environment. Let me turn to our second agenda item, the ROK-US Space Cooperation. This agenda is particularly auspicious. Yesterday, on June 21st, Korea successfully launched NURI, also known as Korean Space Launch Vehicle 2. All three stages used indigenously developed launch vehicle engines. As demonstrated in this remarkable progress, I believe that space is the new frontier for our future partnership. Korea's space project started in 1992, so this year marks the 30th year. In fact, cooperation on space programs between the US and Korea entered a new phase with Korea's signature in May last year as the 10th member of NASA's Artemis Accords. It is against this background that the new Korean government set an ambitious goal for becoming the seventh largest space power. To this end, we are committed to significantly strengthening space infrastructure and beefing up policy and institutional support. In this context, it is noteworthy that the two presidents in their recent meeting reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening the ROK-US alliance across all sectors of space cooperation. In particular, building on Korea's previous commitment to participate in the Artemis program, the two presidents agreed to support Korea's development of the Korean Positioning System, KPS. While we will focus on cooperation in space science and exploration, we have to be also mindful of security, space security, as a safe and sustainable space environment is indispensable for the future of humanity. As a truly reliable partner of the US, Korea stands ready to do its part for a win-win partnership in space. I look forward to a productive discussion today. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much to the Korea Economic Institute of America and to the Korean Embassy in Washington for facilitating and putting together today's event. It's a great opportunity. And Ambassador Lee, welcome to Washington. We're very glad you're here. And as we were having dinner last night, the ambassador talked about his week wanting it to be action-oriented and about follow-up, as he just said on Foreign Minister Park Jin's visit last week. And I think as we just heard in his remarks, he is certainly very action-oriented with the list of things that we need to be talking about today. And so, as the ambassador pointed out, it's particularly fantastic to be able to have this discussion and this session a month after President Biden's historic meeting with President Yoon in Seoul to focus on economic and technology cooperation. The Biden-Harris administration has made clear since day one that enhancing economic collaboration with friends, partners, and allies would be a top priority. And I'm delighted to see the growing importance of U.S. ROK ties in this regard. In my current role as U.S. Senior Official for Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, I regularly engage my Korean counterparts on these issues as they relate to APEC. But I've also had the good fortune to collaborate closely with the Republic of Korea on economic priorities in my prior role as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Trade Policy and Negotiations, during which time I had the opportunity to help coordinate the U.S. ROK Senior Economic Dialogue. And, in that dialogue, economic security, the topic of our first agenda item today, is certainly at the top of our bilateral agenda. And it is the commitment by both the United States and the Republic of Korea to develop technologies to tackle the challenges of today and tomorrow that make the imperative of a strong economic security agenda so important. So speaking personally, on my first trip to Seoul, which was less than 3 years ago, in November 2019, it was a real wake-up call for me on the extent to which our bilateral cooperation on technology would require a renewed and sustained effort to build our partnership. and the range of areas of economic cooperation, many of which we'll discuss today, between our two countries has grown impressively in just the past few years. Without a doubt, the Republic of Korea is one of our closest allies and partners. Our two countries are working together on every issue under the sun, from combating the COVID-19 pandemic to tackling climate change and food insecurity, to bolstering supply chain security, to safeguarding peace, democracy, and the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific and around the world. Indeed, it is safe to say that our alliance has truly evolved into a comprehensive global partnership. And I'm encouraged that many of the points that Ambassador Lee just made are very similar to what I'm about to talk to you about, which I think only speaks to the fact that we have a very strong partnership where we're working hand in hand with the Yoon administration to address the key challenges of the 21st century and realize the promise of a truly global Korea. Our ironclad commitment to the Republic of Korea and the strength of the U.S.-ROK alliance was most prominently on display during President Biden's visit to Seoul in May. The meeting between President Biden and President Yoon marked the earliest summit between a U.S. president and a newly inaugurated Korean president in our two countries' history. That says a lot about the importance that the administration places on the alliance and our belief in the pivotal role that the Republic of Korea can play as a global leader in democracy, economy, and technology. The U.S.-ROK Summit also highlighted the evolution of our alliance into a broad and comprehensive global partnership and the increasing focus on economic and technology issues in the context of our bilateral relationship. While our Chorus Free Trade Agreement, which turned 10 years old this year, remains the foundation of our bilateral economic ties, we also see that the future of our economic partnership lies in our deepening cooperation on climate change, supply chains, critical and emerging technologies, cybersecurity, space, and many other very future-oriented topics. During the summit, our two leaders announced a new strategic economic and technology partnership, which we've talked about this afternoon, in line with our shared democratic principles and universal values. There's a long list of outcomes, which you can read in the Leaders' Joint Statement, but as Ambassador Lee did, I'd like to highlight a few that I think are especially important and worth emphasizing today. On supply chains, our two presidents agreed to work together to tackle the immediate and long-term challenges in the supply chain ecosystem, including by cooperating on early warning systems to detect and address potential supply chain disruptions. We also announced a regular ministerial-level supply chain and commercial dialogue led by Commerce and their ROK counterpart, MOTIE, to promote resilient supply chains in key products such as semiconductors, batteries, and critical minerals. On climate change, our leaders reaffirmed our commitments to our announced nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement, agreed to enhance cooperation to address methane emissions globally, and decided to strengthen cooperation in clean energy fields such as hydrogen, clean shipping, accelerated deployment of zero-emission vehicles, and aligning international financial flows with global net zero emissions by 2050 and deep reductions in the 2020s. Recognizing the incredible strength of our respective scientific and research communities, our two leaders agreed to enhance public and private sector cooperation to protect and promote critical and emerging technologies such as AI, quantum technology, biotechnology, biomanufacturing, and autonomous robots. They also committed to actively support people-to-people exchanges among experts in these fields between our two countries, and this commitment builds on the past 20 years of cooperation under the U.S.-ROK Science and Technology Agreement. In the digital arena, the ROK announced its plans to join the United States Declaration for the Future of the Internet. Both sides also agreed to deepen collaboration on regional and international cyber policy and to work together to develop open, transparent, and secure 5G and 6G network devices and architectures using open radio access network approaches at home and abroad. To support economic and national security, our two countries committed to enhance cooperation between our foreign investment screening and export control authorities to protect sensitive technologies. President Biden and President Yoon also announced a new economic security dialogue between the White House and the Yongsan Presidential Office, which aims to align the bureaucratic and policy approaches to economic security between our two governments. On space, the topic of our second panel, we agreed to foster joint research in space exploration and to support the ROK's development of the Korea positioning system. Both countries also agreed to hold a third U.S. ROK civil space dialogue and to strengthen cooperation between our two countries' space industries. These commitments, as the ambassador pointed out, build on the ROK's previous commitment to participate in NASA's Artemis program. And finally, I'm also pleased to note that the ROK joined leaders from the United States and 12 other nations to launch the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework in Tokyo in late May. The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is President Biden's signature economic initiative for the Indo-Pacific region, and we look forward to working with the ROK and all our partners to further develop the framework. So I could go on, because there was a lot more in there, but in the interest of time, I think as it's very evident from the list of outcomes, it is clear that our leaders both have an ambitious vision for U.S. ROK cooperation on global economic and technology issues. And so now, the task for all of us is how we can implement this vision. So for us at the State Department, the work certainly has already begun. Since the summit, the pace of our diplomatic engagement has not slowed. In early June, Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman visited Seoul, where she met with her Korean counterparts and also held a trilateral meeting with the vice foreign ministers from the Republic of Korea and Japan. Trilateral cooperation on economic issues such as climate, supply chains, women's economic empowerment, health, and more was an important part of that conversation, and we're continually working to strengthen our ties in that area. In addition, as we referenced earlier, last week Secretary Blinken hosted Foreign Minister Park at the State Department for their first bilateral meeting since the start of the Yoon administration. And I understand they had an excellent meeting and are off to a great start in their relationship. U.S. Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment, Jose Fernandez, also has been a leader in deepening the U.S. ROK economic relationship. Following Undersecretary and Vice Minister-led U.S. ROK Senior Economic Dialogue discussions in Seoul in December, we were pleased to announce that this last week that the ROK had joined Undersecretary Fernandez and representatives from 7 other countries and the European Union to establish a new initiative called the Minerals Security Partnership. The goal of this ambitious initiative is to help build reliable, responsible, critical minerals supply chains. And the partnership will help catalyze investment from governments and the private sector for strategic mining, processing, and recycling opportunities that adhere to the highest environmental, social, and governance standards. This is only just the beginning. I know my colleagues at the State Department are busy turning vision into reality as we prepare as well for the upcoming Global Supply Chain Ministerial to be hosted by Secretary Blinken and Secretary Raimondo, as well as the next round of the U.S. ROK Senior Economic Dialogue, as well as many, many other engagements across our two governments across a broad range of economic and technology issues. And as U.S. Senior Official for APEC, of course, I want to mention APEC, and I also see this agenda as ripe for collaboration with the Republic of Korea in APEC, which shares many of these same aims with the organization writ large. The United States APEC host year in 2023 will also provide an excellent platform to advance U.S. ROK cooperation across a broad range of issues from women's economic empowerment to digital economy in partnership with all of the APEC economies. The challenges we face today are significant, but as President Biden said in Seoul, to adapt to the new reality, the ROK-U.S. alliance must also evolve further, not just with words, but with actions. We should ceaselessly strive to deliver real benefits that can impact the people of our two countries. In that vein, we look forward to working with the Republic of Korea and with all of you as we strive to realize the full potential of our economic and technology partnership in concrete and tangible ways. And as the ambassador noted, to be action-oriented and to follow up. As always, we welcome candid thoughts, feedback, and creative ideas from experts inside and outside government. It is through dialogue like the one here today that we can sharpen our thinking, improve our initiatives, uncover new ideas, and strengthen the relationships between people in both of our countries. I also want to just briefly introduce 2 of my colleagues who are here today. Jennifer Stephenson there in the back corner from our Korea desk, and also Daniel Koo from our Office of Economic Policy, both of whom do a tremendous amount of work to build this U.S. ROK bilateral economic partnership, and are great resources, and I hope you'll all get a chance to meet them as well. Our people in the United States and the Republic of Korea jointly share an interest in their future economic prosperity and their future national security. Economic security and space cooperation, the two topics for today, both sit at the nexus of these twin aspirations. And I very much look forward to today's discussion, as it is always a great opportunity to put American experts and Korean experts in the same room and let them get to work. After all, it is and always has been our country's two peoples that are critical ingredients to success in our endeavors. So I will now stop talking and let the real experts get to work. So thank you very much.